All right, stocks continue racing away here, and this decision really has nothing to do with it, but the president really indicating that he means what he says. He wants to build a wall, an executive order, the first thing to sort of get the mechanics in place for that. There are a couple of questions. Will it be a physical wall across the entire border, and who ultimately will pay for it? To Republican Congressman Mike Kelly. Congressman, who does end up paying for it?
But you know what? We don't know exactly yet how it's going to work, Neil, but I'll tell you, I think President Trump is the new action figure for America. He's been doing everything he said he was going to do, and he's doing it in almost warp speed. So he's keeping promises that he made. And it's the old story, you know, say what you mean and mean what you say. That's exactly who he is. I think America is looking at this.
Who is going to pay for it?
Well, you know what? I'm not on the inside track of that. He doesn't sit down and tell me how he's going to do it. But I have great confidence at the end of the day, Mexico is going to have a large investment in that wall.
How will that happen, though?
Well, I think you can do it a couple of different ways. You can certainly do it with trade, and he's a great guy about negotiating deals. So I think if I were Mexico, I'd take a long look at what America's meant for Mexico. And I'd say, you know what, let's make sure that we're keeping our relations the right way. And a lot of people look at the agreements we've had over the past, trade agreements, and say, you know what, well-intentioned, but really didn't work out the way we thought they would. So I'm looking for something in a trade initiative. But other than that, I don't know, because he has a different way of approaching things than anything any of us have ever seen before. But coming from the private sector, as the president does, there's ways to get things done that the average politician would not look at and think could be happening. So I'm anxious to see how he's going to do it, too, but I know he's going to do it.
Let's talk a little bit about these executive orders. Of course, the markets like a lot of them, especially his talk to cut down on regulations by upwards of 75%, a big tax relief, huge tax cuts, I think, to quote the president. Is that doable? Is everyone in your party in sync with that? Because depending on who you talk to, Congressman, there are others who say they better be revenue neutral in the end, or else they're not going to fly with them because of deficits, debt. What do you think?
You know, and I understand that, and you and I have had this conversation before, and sometimes you do have to work with the deficit to get to a positive end. A lot of people in our party said, listen, we're not going to go any further, whether it's in infrastructure, whether it's on defense. I would just say this, at the end of the day, we've got to keep promises to people. We've got to get America back on track again. We can do it by working together. I think the president, more than anybody else, has a way of getting to a positive end than anybody I've seen in the 6 years I've been in Washington. I've longed for times to be back in the car lot working with customers. So the goal is to make sure that somebody gets the car they want to know, the price they want to pay, and that's what I want to do too. I want to do the same thing in Congress. I want to make sure that we serve the American people the way they deserve to be served. They have made a loud statement on November the 8th. They expect us to get things done. This president will get it done, and I think it's going to work in a way that maybe not overnight, but long range, you're going to see a very positive return on it.
Would you personally, Congressman, be open to making the deficit a little worse with big tax cuts, knowing that the revenue does eventually come in? Of course, the last big go-around we saw, that when Ronald Reagan tried it, the revenue came in, but Republicans in charge spent that money and then some. But are you okay, not with the spending the money when it comes in, but with going into bigger deficits in the near term before the money starts flooding in from those big tax cuts later on?
Listen, there's nothing wrong with deficits as long as you spend the money the right way and you get a positive return on that investment. And I think that's what we're all looking for. The biggest money spends that we've had the last couple of times that we've done it have brought actually nothing back into the economy. It's really hurt the economy. We are going to have to do some deficit spending. And I know a lot of my deficit hawk friends will say, no, don't do it. How are you going to rebuild the military? How are you going to redo infrastructure? How are you going to do the things we need to do and say, listen, has to be revenue neutral, and we're not going to borrow any more money. I think you have to borrow money. Sometimes you have to borrow money to get it going. It's the old story. You got to prime the pump. Do it the right way. Do it with the right intentions, and you're going to get positive results on that. So looking into the future and saying it may not have that positive return within 90 days or 100 days, which everybody thinks can happen, but in the long run, it can happen. Neil, you know it can happen. It's happened throughout our history.
So you seem to be open to just being flexible on this and this doctrine about, you know, don't make deficits worse. You could live with that, because it seems like the rollout for this, and this could be wrong, the intelligence we're getting, Congressman, is that maybe something, a corporate tax reform, maybe coupled with infrastructure spending, and then later in the fall, I'm told, potentially in the fall, the personal tax rates addressed. What do you think of that timetable?
Well, I can't address the timetable because it's hard to say. This is a difficult process once you get the two bodies trying to work together, the House and the Senate, and you know that's a very difficult negotiation. But if we're looking at the big picture and the long-term effects of this, we have to understand, and I've done this myself in my private life, there's times I had to borrow money to keep the business going and to improve the business. I couldn't say, you know what, can't do it right now, doesn't look good. You've got to be looking to the future and what are the positive returns for America's investors, and that's hardworking American taxpayers. I'd be a fool to stand here in front of you and say, listen, I'm not interested in any of that stuff. If it just doesn't make sense to me. If it helps us grow, if it gets people back to work, if it makes America strong and makes us safer, why wouldn't you do it? You have to sometimes borrow money to get there. I think we can do it, and I think with the results of a real positive economy, that will come back in. It'll come back in over a longer time, but it's going to come back and it's going to rebuild us as a nation. We need to start heading in that direction. You know, when you fly around the world, fly into America and you think maybe this is the third world country. You look in some other places in the world, they've done great things with infrastructure money and with doing things like this. We have to look at what works and what serves the American people the best way. I just think sometimes we get too confused between Republicans and Democrats and saying, oh, we can't possibly do this because it isn't part of our DNA. Here's what's part of my DNA, winning. And we can win. And we've got a guy right now in the White House that's going to win. He's very impatient with failure. It's time for us to stop arguing about some of these philosophical things and say, what's the best thing for America right now? And how can we get a positive return for our hardworking American taxpayers? That's all I'm looking for. And it doesn't matter to me whether it's Republican or Democrat that gets it. I just want to get there. I'm tired of losing.
Now, is it subliminal you chose to wear green vests in light of the Dow 20,000, or is that just coincidental?
You know, I was listening to your prior segment. I think we want to make America green again, so I have on green because...
I thought so. I thought there was some method to this. Congressman, thank you very much.
It's all go.
Good catching up with you.
It's all go. It's all go.
There you go.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.